Okay, let's do a drafting guide for OB60. I skipped OB59, probably shouldn't have, but time got away from me, sorry about that. Things were actually pretty different between OB58 and 59, but things aren't too different between OB59 and 60. Just a reminder that this is made with PC in mind and with experience from high diamond and master level competitive games. So this could vary if you're on console or if you're in one of the lower tiers. Anyway, since tanks are the most important role, let's talk about them first. There isn't a whole lot that's different here. Makoa is still the best tank and arguably the best character in the game. One hook can get a pick more effectively than most ultimates can. Not to mention the hook can be kind of BS. I know everyone's been hooked through something like a wall or the floor at least a few times, right? Or even through the payload. When it comes to first picking and banning, Makoa is never really a bad option. Speaking of first picks and bans, this is where things have gotten a bit different. Torvald is really good right now. Thanks to his rework, he's able to do a lot more than he could before, and even after some nerfs to said rework, he's still standing tall. You guys may have seen how powerful he's been in esports if you watch the PPL. That power does transfer to our public rank games, but not fully. Torvald's bubble is incredibly powerful in a coordinated setting. Thanks to the rise of Maven and Droxus, Torvald can bubble these two divers as they dive in, making them both harder to kill and giving them 40% bonus damage with the Field Study legendary. These dives work best when communicated, and communication isn't something that's really present in public games. However, a Torvald that keeps his eye on his teammates can still make good use of this strategy. When his bubbles are paired with a Luminary Genos, it can spell certain death for whoever is in the sights of the flank that has both of these buffs on them. Outside of the bubble, Torvald also has his Silence, which can also spell certain death for the victim. If the victim can't break line of sight to get the beam off, one of Torvald's teammates can easily finish them off. Even if a teammate can't, Torvald is already dealing damage to the target with the Silence itself, and once they're free of it, Torvald can use his high DPS and fall-off-less projectiles to finish the kill himself. And on top of all that, we all know what happens when it's working on a map with edges. Now, I'm not going to say Torvald is as powerful as Makoa because I don't think he is. Torvald is at his best on maps with edges and with a team that's built around him. Makoa is at his best in really any situation besides when he's against a Torvald, since Torvald can bubble the people Makoa hooks, which is really an advantage you don't want to pass up. Like Makoa though, he is a rather good first pick and ban candidate. Then when it comes to the other tanks, nothing is too different. Ashe and Barrack are still really good. Ruckus is a great option as well on maps that make use of his fantastic mobility. Inara is a bit better before due to her speed buffs, and with the rise of flanks, her cripple legendary can be very effective at neutralizing them. Just remember to avoid drafting a double defensive tank comp. Those get eaten alive by BK since defensive tanks really don't like Grumpy Bomb. You want to have at least one aggressive tank. Moving on to the damage dealers, some things are different. BK got his bomb detonation bug fixed, and that has made him a much more consistent and reliable blaster option. He's definitely the best of the three blasters, but he does take more work and skill than the other two blasters. BK's bombs take time to master. They aren't really something most people just pick up and are able to perfectly use right away. But once you get past that learning curve, he can really work wonders. He also has a lot less counters than Drogos and Willow. The rise of Andro and Maeve have really hurt those two. But BK doesn't fear them quite as much. No flank wants to dive into him and end up getting stunned by a Grumpy Bomb. Also, like I said before, BK is a terror for defensive tanks and is still of course really good against mobile ones. The only one he really struggles against is Ashe. If you notice the enemy drafted something like Torv and Barrack, then you should most definitely be picking up BK if you have somebody on your team who can play him. It'll give you a big advantage. Now, even with BK being a lot better, I wouldn't say first pick or ban him, because he's not that much better. As far as a damage that you can ban, Shaolin is still up there. Shaolin is a very effective character who can really take on anyone in the game by himself, besides a tank. He is also very good at dealing with flanks, and like I said, two flanks have risen up. If you want to draft flanks, then banning him isn't a bad idea. I wouldn't exactly say he's the best first pick option though, not over tanks. Now, let's talk about the other two blasters, Drogos and Willow. These two keep falling off. They both have a ton of counters, so here's the rule with them. Don't draft them early. If you do that, then you're asking to get countered into oblivion. It's better to draft them later on when you know the enemy can't draft counters for you. If BK is taken and you have to pick one of these two, I'd go with Drogos because with Wormjets, a good Drogos can maneuver around and away from his counters. Willow can't really do this. If Maeve jumps on Willow and Willow flutters away, Maeve can easily follow and then Willow can't run away again. When it comes to banning these two, I'll tell you right now, Willow is an absolute waste of a ban. I know people still ban her for whatever reason, but don't, please. Willow is often more of a liability than an asset. As for Drogos, I know a lot of people like to ban him too, but he's easier to counter now than ever before, so I wouldn't. The only time where I'd ban Drogos is if the map is Frog Isle. It's difficult for his counters to effectively take him down on that map if his team is playing correctly. And you know, that's what I base everything on, people playing correctly. Cassie is still great, a skilled Cassie can do a lot, still struggles against barriers, so if you want to run Cassie, get a good Wrecker character alongside her. If you don't, then Cassie isn't going to be able to play at her full potential. Leon is still pretty much in the same place, a good pick but not a must pick or ban by any means. I think Leon may rise up whenever they fix her bugs. Her presence and valor come out of her feet for whatever reason, so if there's something in front of your feet, then those abilities won't deal damage. There's also the Eminence bug where the damage sometimes won't scale. That legendary would be so good if it worked right because on certain maps you can get off some major damage if you have the skill to land your presences. Kinessa and Strix, like Grover, are characters you really only pick on maps with long sightlines. On Timbermill they reign supreme, you just have to ban Maeve if you're planning to pick them because a bubbled Maeve jumping on them is death. Victor is still in a weird spot, there's almost always going to be a better option than him. Tyra is in the same boat except Tyra is a worse Victor. Her DPS is lower than his, and she doesn't have movement like he does. When I look at Tyra, I see so much wasted potential. Her Firebomb can be such a nightmare for defensive tanks, and her Hunting Party legendary is low-key OP. Any target you stick that on will get melted. If they can just give her that one buff that she needs, whatever it may be, I think Tyra can really rise up. Supports now. Nothing's any different. Genos and Maldamba are the go-tos. I'd give Genos the edge over Mal, just because he's easier to play, he's harder to kill, and he has the second most powerful CC in the game that, unlike Makoa's hook, requires no aim to land. Saris and Ying are of course below these two. The only time you really want them is if Genos is taken and no one on your team can confidently play Mal. Remember guys, don't force people onto Mal if they can't play him. They'll end up doing more on Saris. Plus, her ult is really good. Never forget that. One of the best in the game. Grok, like Grover, is a damage, but Grok is better against Barrack and Ying, because they have stationary deployables to bounce your shock pulse off of. He is also really good on Frog Isle and Ice Mines, since the enemy team is always grouped up closely on those maps. Pip is still outclassed by everything and isn't worth picking, and that's lame, I know. Supports as a whole aren't really normally first picks or bans, not over the stuff I mentioned at least. I can see why somebody would want to first pick Genos though. Now for flanks, and for once I'm excited to talk about them. We have two viable flanks in the game, Maeve and Androxus. Maeve is the better one because Maeve is just more well-rounded and versatile. People also fear Maeve. Out of all the characters I've been seeing get banned lately, I've seen her get banned the most. However, even though Maeve is really good, I don't think that Maeve really warrants getting banned so much. I feel like people do it because either they don't want to deal with her or because they aren't entirely positive on how to deal with her. Like I said, Shaolin is very good against flanks. On top of that, Barrack is also very good against mobile targets because of Architectonics. It really limits what a flank can get away with. Makoa can be good against Maeve when her 9 lives is down, but even if he does hook her and he does cleanse it, he just forced her to use a 20-second cooldown for his 9-second cooldown. Maeve also suffers from players with good aim because they aren't fazed by her small hitbox and her mobility, which is some of her greatest strengths. Now I'm not saying it's a bad idea to ban Maeve because it isn't. You're taking a very powerful character out of the equation, but I feel like as time passes, Maeve is going to become less of a threat because people will be more used to taking her on. What I want to see happen is high-res buff and fix the other flanks so Maeve can have more competition. Then we could really see how good she is. As for first picking her, I think the tanks are a better first pick, but it isn't a waste first picking Maeve. As for Andro, he isn't as good as Maeve, but he is still very good. His time to kill is absolutely disgusting. He can kill you in a second. If he lands crits, he can kill you faster than you can react. I don't really think having a character like that is healthy for the game at all, but regardless, it still makes him better. He does have more things that can deal with him effectively than Maeve does though, so I wouldn't really ever first pick or ban him. As for the other flanks, well, Eevee could be good, but Eevee is just so buggy and it's not worth picking overly buggy characters. Buck is not good. He can be okay with a Torv bubble, but Maeve and Andro can be even better, so what's the point? Talus is in a better spot now, but he isn't really competitive viable yet. If they made his Blitz upper let him go upward into the air like Maeve's Pounce, then I think that would help him out a bit. Lex and Xin are good on maps with no verticality, but even on those maps, I wouldn't pick them over Maeve or Andro. Lex and Xin being useful pretty much relies on the enemy doing something very wrong. I get arguments about how Xin is really good on every video I mention him on, but he's not. I'm sorry guys, he's really not. Not against a team that knows what they're doing. Alright, now Skye. Skye isn't really all that bad. I've seen her work pretty well in some situations. Skye can do a ton of damage to tanks, but she gets countered pretty hard by Illuminate, so I wouldn't say go out of your way to pick her when you can just pick, again, Maeve or Andro. These two, they really just have no competition, guys. I really want to see them with competition. Alright, so that's it for this update's drafting guide. There's of course a patch preview on Friday, so new balance is on the way, and if things turn out to be different in OB61, I'll be sure to make an updated version of the drafting guide. And that's pretty much it guys. I want to thank you all for watching. I very much appreciate it, and I'm going to see you guys later. Bye!